In life, secrets can be burdensome, and sometimes we discover the harshest truths from the people we love the most. My story begins with a painful moment when I discovered my wife was cheating on me. What's worse is that my daughter helped me hide this affair. Faced with deception and betrayal from those closest to me, I made the tough decision: divorce. But then I sought not only justice for myself but also a way to avenge the pain I had suffered. Follow this emotional and intense journey as I discover the power of recovery and the powerful steps I took to rebuild my life. Life is full of surprises that can sometimes feel like we're being pulled into unexpected situations. For those who stay in touch, the appreciation of these precious moments is even more meaningful. Time flies, and the love you share can become limited. The seasons change, and I am no exception. You don't have to wonder why, because your time is gone. Imagine a typical family. I'm Trevor Fruiton, a 45-year-old father with thinning hair who is in pretty good shape but doesn't have a six-pack. I need to lose about 10 pounds and prefer contacts to glasses. I don't need reading glasses, though. My wife, Michelle, is also 45. She has a little belly and a round figure, which I like. Michelle is an ordinary woman, not too beautiful but not too ugly, always wears glasses and insists on being called by her full name. Then there's our 21-year-old daughter, Ally, a senior in college. Ally has put on a little weight since her high school volleyball days. She's fiercely independent and vocal about women's rights, but she still relies on us in some ways. Now that I'm the sole breadwinner in our family, money is tight. I don't want Ally to be saddled with college debt, so she's still living at home. That's not to say that Michelle and Ally don't enjoy nice things. I drive a beat-up F-150 while they have fancy cars. Our house isn't worth much either, and they've been paying off our mortgage. Our neighborhood was like many other suburbs, with the occasional block party. We weren't really close to our neighbors, except for the family next door, whose daughter Sally was best friends with Ally. After Ally went to college, I felt lost. We used to spend so much time together, and now the void was unbearable. Even my volunteer work didn't help. One night, I asked Michelle if she was happy. I asked, "Michelle, are you happy?" She asked, "Happy with what?" I continued, "With your life. You seem to have drifted away from me and lost your light. I miss the times we spent with Ally. Am I doing something wrong or not doing anything?" Michelle reassured me that everything was fine and she had no complaints. "Why so many questions?" she asked. I just wanted her to be happy. Maybe she could see a counselor to help balance her emotions and improve her mood. I thought about it, but wasn't sure. Just 2 weeks later, Michelle started weekly sessions with a life coach. You might think I was expecting a change in our bedroom routine, but no, we kept up our twice-weekly routine. Was it normal? I don't know. I never discussed it with anyone, and I didn't like intruding on my friends' privacy. Mark and Cindy, our neighbors, are in their 60s. Mark is not very handy and Cindy loves to bake, which has led to me gaining a few extra pounds. One day, while I was fixing Mark's sauna pump, I overheard their conversation. They were talking about the sliding patio door making a scratching noise. Mark said, "Unless Michelle is home from her mother's, it must be Ally." I hadn't seen her in a long time. As I sat in the gazebo in the backyard, I overheard Ally's conversation. She mentioned that Mom was in the house, and I couldn't believe my ears when she said, "Oh my God, Mom, you're so behind. Try Max. Sally said he's fun, and he'll definitely please you. Maybe this is what you need to get the heat back on." I felt like I was being hit. Sally also mentioned that Max is so small but so passionate. I can't believe Ally would say such things about her mother. Not only is this untrue, but it makes me feel like the whole family is on the brink of a crisis. We need to sit down and talk about this. What will happen next? Can I save my marriage before it's too late? Our story has only just begun, and those who... I was boiling with anger, feeling like my daughter was trying to set Michelle up with Jeff's friend. It was infuriating to think that I had to just sit back and let this happen. Despite never attempting anything like that myself, I felt compelled to suggest she experiment with Max instead. My rage was palpable, and the silence that followed my thoughts was thick with tension. How could they be plotting to ruin my marriage? What had I done to deserve this betrayal? After a brief, strained conversation, I hung up, still seething. I was frustrated and a bit relieved I hadn't hurt myself while wrestling with that impossible pump. The atmosphere at home had been tense all week, and I found myself going out of my way to annoy Michelle and Ally. It worked, and I spent most of my time holed up in my office or tinkering away in the garage. I even took the opportunity to sharpen and clean my power tools. I didn't let my hunting trip fall by the wayside, though. I had someone keep tabs on Michelle while I was out in the woods. Seeing photos of Ally, Jeff, and a skinny guy entering our house around noon on Saturday raised alarm bells in my mind. When I got back late Sunday, Michelle was trying to be affectionate, but I was having none of it. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease, especially when I noticed Michelle sitting oddly, her legs crossed and leaning to one side, looking more uncomfortable than usual. In the kitchen later, Ally's playful slap on Michelle's backside sealed the deal. The two of them erupted into giggles that felt tainted with something I couldn't quite pinpoint. I felt a heavy weight settle in my chest, and I worried about whether my hunting companions had inadvertently exposed me to something toxic. To avoid Michelle, I chose to sleep on the living room couch. The next morning, I announced I was heading to the doctor due to a fabricated illness, claiming I had trouble breathing. My boss readily agreed to my day off. I planned to feign having COVID-19, which would buy me time to work on my exit strategy. With accrued sick leave and vacation days, I could take enough time off to reach our traditional Christmas Eve dinner, all while keeping people at a distance. Did I actually have COVID? I wasn't sure. I was fully vaccinated and felt healthy, but my heart was shattered, and I wanted to separate from these 4 people. While my lungs were fine, I checked into an extended stay hotel, feeling no need to live in misery. Michelle seemed relieved when I told her I would be out of quarantine in time for Christmas Eve. She and her daughter called me twice daily, and I feigned fatigue to keep the conversations short. During this time, I focused on plotting my revenge and making preparations, like updating the beneficiaries and emergency contacts on my accounts. Apartment hunting was a daunting task, but it drove home the finality of my decision to divorce Michelle and push Ally out into the real world. When consumed by anger, a whirlwind of thoughts swirled through my mind, many of which could easily land me behind bars, definitely not part of my future plans. One idea, sparked by a news segment about a company hiring an escort to get rid of unwanted employees, crept into my mind. Although it could expose Jeff's indiscretions, it would also hurt Ally, who I felt deserved it. As Christmas approached, our artificial tree twinkled with blinking red, white, and green lights, and the scent of pine cones filled the air. We gathered around the dining room table for our 23-year-long Christmas Eve tradition, a ritual that had started long before Ally was even born. Michelle had prepared the meal, now laid out before us, but this time there would be no short prayer of thanks. I stood up to speak, but it certainly wouldn't be a cheerful toast. I began by asking Jeff about Heather, my tone darker than the festive ambience around us. Jeff stammered, claiming he had no idea who Heather was. I pressed on, bringing up the striking raven-haired beauty with ruby lips he was seen with just last Sunday. His reaction was like that of a deer caught in headlights. He froze, and his denial felt flimsy at best. With a firm resolve, I played an audio clip from my phone, where his voice distinctly said, "Okay, Heather, you're awesome. Don't stop. God, I'm CM again." As the recording ended, the weight of his own words hung heavy in the air. Ally's expression morphed from confusion to fury. She exploded, accusing him of betrayal and demanding he leave. Before Jeff could stand up, I stepped behind him and pushed him back into his chair. Both Jeff and I managed to hold Ally back from launching at him. "Michelle, please take our daughter into the other room," I instructed. Calm her down. Junior and I need to have a serious talk. Michelle ushered Ally out of the dining room and into the kitchen, but not without a cacophony of four-letter words echoing in her wake. It took only a few minutes to lay out the gravity of the situation to Jeff. I made it clear, he needed to warn Max to steer clear of me, or he would come to deeply regret ever crossing paths with me. It was clear Jeff grasped the precariousness of his position and the limited choices ahead of him. But there was more to discuss. With a deliberate movement, I placed a manila envelope in front of him, and to my surprise, he agreed to fulfill one last request of mine. I called out to the kitchen, "Michelle, bring Ally back in." Both women returned, their expressions a mix of shock and heartbreak. "Let me explain how I got that recording, Jeff," I began. "Her name isn't Heather, and I don't even know what her real name is. She's an expensive escort. I hired her to seduce you and record the encounter. There's also a video if you'd like to watch it." "Daddy, what the hell? You hired her?" Ally interjected, disbelief evident in her voice. I looked into her eyes and said, "Yes, sweetie. How does it feel to be betrayed? Stabbed in the back?" Michelle made a small noise, and Ally's gaze darted momentarily towards her mother, both of them now in tears. "Jeff, do you have something to say?" I prompted, switching my phone to video mode. Jeff stood up, took the folder in front of him, and directed his attention to Michelle. "Michelle Fruiton, you've been served," he announced as he handed her the folder. I half expected her to either faint or throw up, but instead, she regained her composure quickly, even if the impact of receiving divorce papers was as shocking as a sudden thunderclap. While Ally and Michelle consoled each other in the master bedroom, I took charge outside. Allie's early graduation gift, a brand new car, was loaded onto a carrier and driven away. Everything she owned was left behind in a trash bag on the front porch. Michelle's belongings followed suit, but the contrast was striking. Her possessions were moved to a worn 23-year-old sedan, a stark symbol of our 23 years of marriage. My lawyer had reminded me that I was still obligated to provide Michelle with transportation. After settling our credit cards, I ensured both of Ally's cards were cancelled since I was the co-signer. Taking a deep breath, I downed another shot of bourbon. Our cell phones were cancelled as well, and I reluctantly had to give Michelle a basic phone with limited talk time and texts. Ally received no such limitation. Both she and Michelle retained their iPhones, complete with all the features, while I planted a for sale sign in the front yard with a few resolute hits of my hammer. This was it, the beginning of a new chapter, albeit one born from betrayal and heartbreak. The dust hadn't settled yet, but I was determined to reclaim my life and my peace. I couldn't actually put the house on the market yet, given that Mayla's name was still on the title. But I wanted her to understand what lay ahead for us. Instead of listening to the cheerful Christmas music that filled the living room, I sought refuge in the basement. The darkness was oddly comforting, especially as I heard the chaos unfolding above me. They had just discovered that none of their devices were operational. A few choice words were hurled my way, names that were far from Christmassy. They seemed mild compared to the furious epithets I had unleashed in the solitude of my hotel room while preparing for this day. "Trevor, we need to talk," they shouted, their voices tinged with anxiety. Speculation flew around the room as they questioned Trevor's whereabouts. They noted that his car was still at home, yet mine was missing. They pondered whether I had taken it, their worry heightening as they realized an unfamiliar vehicle was parked in front of the house. Their phones were dead, and suspicion hung in the air that I had canceled their service. Determined to regain control, they decided to see if Cindy would let them borrow her phone. Calmness returned momentarily, but it was a tactical blunder on their part. I had locked all the entry doors. Now, they stood outside without working phones or credit cards, having left their purses behind. I felt no guilt as I shredded their driver's licenses. It might have been petty, but I knew it would bring them discomfort as they attempted to piece their lives back together. Refilling my shot glass, I turned on the television, hoping to escape into a cheesy, feel-good special. Our reality couldn't have been further from the heartwarming tales displayed on screen. The silence wrapped around me like a comforting blanket until the commotion at the front door announced Mayla and Ali's return. It was then that Michelle's daughter, whom I had distanced myself from, spotted the trash bag on the porch. "Oh my God, this is everything I had in my car. Daddy got rid of my car." Ali shrieked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. Mayla was having none of it. "He wouldn't do that, it's just not in his nature." "Well, maybe the reason your car is missing is that he sold it too." Ali shot back. "I'll be mad if he did. I loved that car." The doorbell rang incessantly, drowning out their frantic chatter. Mayla's frustration was palpable as she yelled, "Trevor, open this door right now. It's freezing out here." I shouted back, "Well, Mishi, the keys to your new car are in the ignition. That orange and green Malibu parked outside is your new ride. All your belongings from your old car have been moved over. The heater might take a minute to warm up, but it has a full tank of gas. Maybe you could call your ex, he probably still has a soft spot for you." One of them yelped, "Lock," while the other pleaded, "He knows." "Trevor, please, let me explain." Michelle tried to sweeten her tone, "Trevor, I know you can hear me. Say something, Merry Christmas. You better leave, Mishi, and take that woman with you." I shot back, relishing the moment. A few tense moments passed in silence before the old Malibu roared to life. It sounded like it needed a new muffler, but I wasn't surprised, the guy had practically given me the car just to get rid of it. Without any fanfare, the two of them drove away, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. It had been ages since I heard of anyone suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning due to a faulty muffler. Maybe I would get lucky, though probably not. About an hour later, my phone lit up with my father-in-law's number. We had never been particularly close, but we managed to tolerate each other. I hesitated, considering whether I should answer. Would this call bring more complications or offer a chance for reconciliation? I glanced at my phone and let Trevor's message slip into voicemail. "Hey Trevor, I've got a couple of upset women here. Thought you might be able to shed some light on the situation. Call me. By the way, Merry Christmas." I muted my cell and took a long sip of my spiked eggnog, allowing the warmth to spread through me. Gradually, I felt my adrenaline rush fade, and the blinking lights of the artificial tree lulled me into a daze. Outside, the sun shone brightly on this cold Christmas morning, casting a cheerful glow despite the chill in the air. The remnants of last night's dinner lay untouched on the dining room table, but the microwave worked its magic, warming up my ham and cheesy potatoes. Honestly, ham and cheesy potatoes were good any time of year. Underneath the tree, gifts were stacked high, waiting to be unwrapped, but they were not for me. Santa had left me nothing this year, a stark reminder of the emptiness that lingered around me. Those carefully wrapped boxes were meant for others, and I couldn't shake the feeling that no one even noticed I hadn't given a single gift. Instead of indulging in the festive spirit, I gathered my most cherished belongings, leaving behind any family photos that might remind me of happier times. They were now scattered across the floor. It took Michelle a few days to track me down at the hotel, and by then, the sun had set, leaving behind a bitter breeze that swept through the air. I had left the latch on, half expecting a salesperson with another pitch for a youth sports team, but when I opened the door, it was Michelle. She stood there, pale-faced, stripped of her usual makeup and styled hair, looking vulnerable. "Trevor, please don't close the door," she begged, her voice shaking. I didn't shut her out but replied, "What do you want, Mishi?" She hesitated before asking, "Can I come in?" I need a chance to explain. I firmly responded, "No. Not like this. Please, Trevor, your neighbors don't need to hear this," she pleaded. "What part of no don't you understand?" I snapped, feeling the anger boil beneath the surface. "Trevor, I really need to explain." "Just listen," she insisted softly, trying to bridge the gap between us. It's about my closeness with Max. My heart sank. You had something with Max? Well, isn't that a surprise? I retorted, my voice laced with venom. Her eyes widened in realization as I continued, you didn't know. I suspected, but now it's confirmed. Actions have consequences, Mela. Wait, you were going to divorce me without any proof. She shot back. Guess right, didn't I? Have you found an attorney yet? I'm working on it, but we don't need a divorce. I'll do anything to save our marriage, she pleaded. It's a little late for that. Why didn't you think about saving our marriage a month ago? I shot back, frustration boiling over. I know why, it's because you're selfish, thinking you're above consequences. You thought you could do whatever you wanted without any repercussions. Did you tell me the day it happened? A week later? How many others have there been? Michelle recoiled at the venom in my words, but I pressed on. You're saying that one stupid decision shouldn't doom our marriage. Which stupid decision are you referring to? I can count many. Planning to cheat might get you a reprieve, but actually doing it, that's a deal breaker. Hiding your infidelity ensured there was no chance for reconciliation. And worst of all, involving our daughter. I want nothing to do with her anymore. This is all on you. If you had kept your bedroom matters private, she would have never been involved. I hate you, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the whispers of the neighbors who had gathered, undoubtedly relishing the drama unfolding before them. Trevor, I'm so sorry. How can I make this up to you? She asked, desperation creeping into her tone. You can't. I hope I'm better off without you, I said, each word dripping with finality. Maybe I will be, maybe I won't. But this is on my terms. Divorce your cheating self and move on. Understand? Please, Trevor, I know you're hurting and angry, but don't do anything rash for a couple of weeks. It was just one afternoon. What can I do to convince you? Just leave and never bother me again, I said coldly, turning away from her. Now, if you'll excuse me, halftime is over and the ball game is starting again. Thanks for stopping by. I didn't wait for a response, I simply stepped back, closing the door behind me and shutting out the chaos of our unraveling lives. The flickering lights of the tree, once a source of comfort, now felt like a cruel reminder of everything I had lost. I closed the door firmly behind me, the sound echoing through the stillness of my one-bedroom apartment. Michelle knocked softly, her voice a quiet plea for connection, but I was ensconced in the protective cocoon of my noise-canceling headphones. I lost track of time in that isolating space, and by morning, she was gone, leaving me to grapple with the emptiness that had settled like dust in the corners of my heart. Fast forward 11 months, and here I was again, following the Christmas Eve tradition I had chosen for myself, dining alone on a simple meal I had prepared after finally learning to navigate the kitchen. They say betrayal can feel like a stab in the back, but in my case, it felt more like a complete shattering of everything I held dear, my heart, my ego, my confidence. Yet, amidst the wreckage, my self-respect remained intact, a flickering flame in a storm. Many nights were spent wrestling with the question of whether I had overreacted, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. I had felt disposable, and so I had left, case closed. The limbo of divorce had left me feeling defeated, and my irritability had begun to bubble over, earning me reprimands from my boss for snapping at coworkers. As the days slipped by, I withdrew from social life, becoming a recluse. My colleagues learned to keep their distance, and I threw myself into my work, avoiding company parties and turning down every date set up by well-meaning friends until their calls dwindled to nothing. Self-pity wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. I started running, the earbuds in my ears acting as a barrier to the outside world, discouraging anyone from approaching. Between my new hobby and my culinary adventures, I realized I needed to regain some weight. None of my old clothes fit anymore. Occasionally, a coworker would compliment my appearance, but those moments were fleeting and rarely deepened into anything more. The divorce proceedings dragged on for 9 long months, during which our house sold swiftly. Instead of monthly support, Michelle walked away with a substantial share of the sale, leaving me to grapple with my own financial adjustments. Ally and Jeff's relationship also crumbled, with Jeff blaming me for introducing him to Heather, a classic case of deflection. I wasn't there with Heather, he was. He had succumbed to temptation, easily swayed by her charm, while I received angry voicemails from Michelle that I never bothered to return. Maybe one day I would, but I wouldn't hold my breath. The absence of an invitation to Ally's graduation stung, but it wasn't as sharp as I expected. The situation was especially tough for Michelle, who hadn't held a full-time job since we tied the knot. My attorney dragged out the financial negotiations as long as possible, and when the house finally sold, I settled all the debts. The court ruled that she should have received maintenance, and with the sales proceeds, her comfortable lifestyle evaporated, mirroring my own. During those attorney meetings, Michelle tried to persuade me that she had made foolish choices, but I remained stoic, watching as tears pooled in her eyes. Hate is a potent emotion, and mine felt like a storm I couldn't quite rein in. A year later, I found myself alone again on Christmas Eve, this time with Macy, a friend who had faced a similar heartache. We shared a meal and cleaned up the dishes together, but our bond was purely platonic. I wasn't ready to dive into something romantic yet. After the kitchen was tidy, Macy led me into the middle of the living room, and we danced closely to the soft music playing in the background. As I swayed, I couldn't help but miss the warmth of a willing partner pressed against me, but after 10 songs, Macy wiped away a tear and quietly left. We were both damaged goods, carrying our scars but sharing a moment of solace. Every month, Ally's tone in her voice messages shifted. She sounded increasingly apologetic, but I never found the courage to return her calls. A casual conversation with my mother revealed that Michelle had moved in with someone new, and surprisingly, I felt mostly indifferent. Gradually, I began to make small talk with others again. Former coworkers still avoided me, and new ones viewed me as an enigma, which made forging friendships challenging. However, I managed to strengthen my bond with Macy, and we remained friends. Then, in late January, a letter arrived from Ally. I hesitated, weighing whether to open it, but curiosity ultimately prevailed. Inside was a short note and a selfie, her bright smile starkly contrasting the gloom of my apartment. "Daddy, I'm sorry that." As I read her words, a mix of emotions washed over me, regret, longing, and a glimmer of hope that perhaps healing was possible. I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions as I read the letter. "I did you wrong," it began, and beneath the words lay a photo of my daughter, Ally, with a slight baby bump. "I was wondering if you could find it in your heart to include a grandchild in your life. If not, I understand. Love, Ally." The return address was a few counties away, and there was no mention of a husband in her letter. My heart sank, I felt torn. I resented the choices she had made that had drastically changed our lives, yet deep down, the idea of having grandchildren had always been a dream of mine. It took me a few weeks to gather my thoughts before I could respond. In that time, Macy and I decided to part ways. We both realized we were merely crutches for each other, and it was time to move on. Macy chose to start anew far away, leaving me with a few lingering hugs and a sense of emptiness. To distract myself, I took up pickleball at the local recreation center. It's a game that blends elements of tennis and badminton, but with its own unique set of rules. Soon, I found myself playing with others who were at my skill level, which brought back memories of my junior high school days. One day, during a particularly intense game, I accidentally hit Shannon, one of the players. Her friends immediately chimed in, teasing her that I should kiss it better. In a moment of playful defiance, I blew her some kisses, and as we were leaving, she asked if I could buy her a soft drink. She remarked that I seemed quiet and shy, which was true. We strolled over to a nearby Jamba Juice, the conversation flowing easily between us. Shannon was a fantastic conversationalist, effortlessly guiding our dialogue. Eventually, she asked if I was seeing anyone. I admitted that I wasn't, and the thought of entering the dating world again felt daunting. Did she die or leave you? Shannon inquired about my previous relationship. I took a deep breath before confessing, she cheated on me, and I either couldn't or wouldn't accept it. It's been a few years now, and I guess I'm still not over it. Shannon then asked about her own situation. What about you? Are you dating anyone? I replied, no one special. She looked surprised when I elaborated that I occasionally went on dates, but nothing meaningful had materialized. When was the last time you went on a proper date? I asked her, curious. Well, she replied, I haven't had a real date since we separated. I've had people over for dinner, but that's about it. I asked when her marriage had ended, and she told me it had been just 2 months ago, on December 26. Pretty sad, isn't it? She added. I reassured her, not really. When I was dumped for a younger woman, it took me a couple of years to regain the confidence to try again. As we talked, I could feel the sweat gathering on my palms. This conversation was taking a toll on me. Sensing my discomfort, Shannon suggested we change the subject. Why did you start playing pickleball? She asked. I explained that my self-pity had grown tiresome, and I needed something to lift my spirits. That's how I got into it too, I shared. My friends convinced me to give it a shot, and I've really come to enjoy it. Yeah, I got a paddle, and playing is helping me come out of my shell, she said with a smile. Well, I have to run. See you tomorrow? I'll be playing at 4 p.m. Sure, nice chatting with you, Shannon, I replied, feeling a sense of warmth spread through me. She offered me some encouraging words as she left. You too, Trevor. Hang in there, things will only get better. That evening, feeling a renewed sense of self-worth, I finally decided to respond to Ally. Ally, I'm willing to try. You and I may never be close, but I'd like to at least meet my grandchild. Please let me know when the time is right. However, under no circumstances will I be in the same room as your mother. I imagined that Ally would deliver her baby around May or June. I wasn't sure if she would receive my response. I hadn't heard back from her since sending the letter. The next day at pickleball, Shannon was particularly flirty, as were a few other women playing. It felt refreshing. After I hit a particularly impressive shot, Shannon turned to me and said, You know, Trevor, you look really good in that shirt. I bet you look even better out of it. Her words made my face flush a deep shade of red, and I couldn't help but chuckle nervously. Funny you should say that, Shannon. I replied, feeling a mix of embarrassment and thrill. The moment the words left my lips, the room erupted in laughter, and I could see Shannon's cheeks flush a bright shade of crimson. To my surprise, a few of the other ladies began chanting in unison, Take them off. Take them off. Take them off. I couldn't help but join in on the fun, taking off my shirt instead, which elicited a chorus of whistles from the crowd. Shannon, however, wagged her finger at me, her expression half embarrassed, half amused, as if I were a naughty child. After I put my shirt back on, she shot me a playful glare and mouthed, You're terrible. I responded with a cheeky kiss, enjoying the light-hearted atmosphere around us. As the games continued, the mood lightened even further, filled with jovial banter among the ladies. One of them jokingly mentioned how great they looked out of yoga pants, prompting Shannon to wait eagerly for her turn to jump in on the conversation. I took the opportunity to chat with her, trying to keep things friendly and casual. Eventually, Shannon turned to me with a twinkle in her eye and asked if I'd buy her a soft drink. I was just about to ask you the same thing, I replied, matching her playful spirit. Nice yoga pants, by the way, she teased, her tone light and flirtatious. Pretty proud of yourself, huh? With drinks in hand, I felt a surge of courage wash over me. Mustering my confidence, I took a deep breath and asked her out for dinner and a movie, fully aware of the risk of rejection. To my immense relief, she agreed. After being out of the dating game for over 27 years, I felt completely out of my element, clueless, awkward, and more than a little nervous. But with each passing moment, I started to relax, allowing my upbeat personality to shine through once again. After several enjoyable dates, Shannon surprised me one evening by suggesting I spend the night. As we cuddled together, she suddenly turned serious and asked, "Who are you thinking of when we're intimate?" Her question caught me off guard. I paused for a moment, considering my response. "Honestly, I'm thinking of you," I replied, my heart racing. "I can't help but wonder what you see in someone like me. Maybe you see a reflection of yourself," I added, realizing that our connection was deepening with each encounter. As time went on, our intimacy grew, and Shannon eventually introduced me to her family and grandchildren. The first meeting was undeniably awkward. Her family was fiercely protective, and I could feel their scrutiny as I tried to navigate the dynamics. However, as time passed and I continued to show my genuine affection for Shannon, they gradually accepted me into their circle. Then came early June, a moment I would always cherish. Shannon nestled against me in bed, a warm smile lighting up her face as she suggested we celebrate our closeness. The air was thick with unspoken desires, and as our moments together became increasingly passionate, I finally understood what she truly meant. It was a beautiful transformation. What began as playful banter had blossomed into something profound, a connection filled with warmth and intimacy. And in that moment, I realized just how far we had come together. I recently shared the joyous news that Ali had welcomed a baby girl just 2 days ago. The excitement between us sparked a brief, passionate moment, leading to a night filled with intimacy that felt like a celebration of new beginnings. The very next day, I sent a bouquet of flowers to Ali, a small gesture to honor her transition into motherhood. Then, a day later, I was surprised to receive an overnight letter from Ali. Her words were filled with heartfelt apologies and a genuine desire to reconnect. She reflected on the lessons I had tried to impart, acknowledging the changes she had undergone since we last spoke. In her letter, she mentioned her daughter, Bonnie, and hinted at the possibility of us reuniting. I shared the letter with Shannon, who read it with an open heart. She found Ali's words sincere and asked me what my intentions were. Concern weighed heavily on me regarding how this might impact my relationship with Shannon. To my relief, she wrapped me in a warm embrace, planting a loving kiss on my lips. Shannon gently encouraged me to let go of the past, emphasizing that doing so would allow our relationship to blossom. With renewed determination, I decided to pay Ali a visit. Knocking on her door unexpectedly, I was greeted with warm, affectionate hugs on our cheeks as we entered her apartment. I held little Bonnie in my arms, marveling at how her tiny hands and feet felt against my skin. She was calm, not a single cry escaping her lips. As the evening unfolded, Shannon brought up Ali's marital status, leading Ali to share that Bonnie's father had been hesitant to fully commit. Throughout the night, Ali and I maintained a respectful distance, allowing time for our emotions to settle. However, as we prepared to leave, Shannon encouraged me to express my feelings to Ali. Driven by her support, I returned to Ali's apartment. With sincerity in my voice, I wrapped her in a warm hug and softly told her that I still loved her. Fast forward 6 months, and the atmosphere was festive as we hosted our traditional Christmas Eve dinner in my apartment. Shannon, Ali, and I gathered together, with Bonnie nestled comfortably in my arms. I offered the Christmas blessing, and we shared a delicious meal, exchanging thoughtful gifts that symbolized our evolving relationships. Afterward, Shannon and I spent the night at her place, marking a significant change in our relationship. A year later, we found ourselves celebrating Christmas Eve at Shannon's home, and I realized just how much life had moved forward. I had embraced this new chapter, finding contentment in the love I shared with Shannon and the joy of being a part of Bonnie's life. The journey hadn't always been easy, but it had led me to a place of warmth and hope for the future.